So Rob, we're sat here in front of a very special trophy, the Heineken Cup, which you obviously won with Wasps back in 2004. What do you remember about that special day?
Well, it was a special year. I think when you look back at the year before, in terms of being the Heineken Cup winners, I think the onwards challenge going into the next year was to be the best in Europe, and to get your hands on this trophy, it takes some doing, and with a special group of coaches and a special group of players. Memories in the Heineken Cup, whilst the quarter-final against Gloucester, never forget the Munster game. That stood out. But I think the challenges onwards, we had probably come up against a potent Toulouse side that had a pedigree in the Heineken Cup. They were the winners the year before, and I think they won the first ever Heineken Cup as well against Cardiff back in the early days. And the challenge that day was probably against a very potent French team with great pedigree, and probably the form going into the game. I think they had qualified as number 1 seed and we were number 2. They'd only lost 1 game similar to ourselves, and the day itself, it was a very hot day. Our preparation had gone so well. Warren and Sean Edwards, we had plastic bags in training because of the hot sunny day in terms of the forecast that afternoon, and that the forecast didn't disappoint. It was a sunny day, a day which probably suited Toulouse more so, because they wanted to play this open, attractive running rugby with an offloading game which was quite unbelievable, breathtaking at times. And for the first 20 odd minutes of that game, we were very much under the pump. Our defence came under pressure many times, and I think we got through the early parts of the game actually leading 6-3, which probably on the scoreboard didn't reflect the actual game itself. And the one thing probably about our attack, we were quite clinical. We took advantage of, I think, the first opportunity going down into the opposition 22 and putting Toulouse under pressure. And Stuart Abbott, after many phases, scored a fantastic try. Stuart was renowned for his footwork, his pace, and he didn't disappoint in that one moment which we needed him. I think it was a try after Paul volley. Our back row that day were quite instrumental in both attack and defence, and I think Vols, as we like to call him, carried really well, nearly scored, but recycled quick ball, and all of a sudden we were 13-6 in front, and probably we didn't deserve to be 7 points in front. But then, as almost against the French side who want to play rugby, they certainly probably put us under even more pressure, and their offloading game. And when you look back at the Toulouse side, they had world-class players, Intermac, Pontrenault, Heymans, the Fabien Pelouse, the Macca brothers, etc., in the back row, and they were quite unbelievable in terms of their offloading game, putting us under pressure. And probably, we went into half-time then just conceding the score. Jan de Leeg scored just before half-time, really missed the conversion, 13-11 up. I think we were quite happy to see the half-time whistle. After a few sort of words by both Warren and Sean in particular, because from a defensive perspective we were under the pump. And thankfully, just after half-time we scored early on. Fantastic try by Mark van Gissenberg. I think it was orchestrated by a lovely set-piece move by Sean Edwards. I think it's called Certainty, what my memory remembers. And Alex King's got a one-on-one with their front row. Giz scores under the posts, and all of a sudden, we're 9 points in the lead. But unfortunately, the Toulouse attack still came at us, put us under pressure, and Lawrence Delalio, for his sins, we had a yellow card on about 56, 57 minutes, and we came under the pump. And I suppose, quite rightly so, after the game, Joe Worsley's performance, both in attack and defence, but primarily he was actually given the job to do that afternoon on the Toulouse back row. and I think he made over 30 tackles, and during that yellow card period we were certainly under the pump, and I think that we didn't concede, but then obviously that pressure had to tell at some stage, and I think then a couple of penalties. El Assal came on for Toulouse. Surprised that he wasn't starting, but he came on and he kicked 3 penalties, and going into, I suppose, the last sort of 2 minutes of the game, it was 20-all, and I think then either side don't want to lose a cup final, particularly when you're playing for that, and I think it was very cagey. There was a lot of kicks in the last couple of minutes of the game, and I think we'd kicked the ball dead, and obviously Toulouse had their dropout, and it wasn't great communication between myself and Tom Voice. The ball bounced, and that's all I had on my mind was field position, and putting Toulouse under some sort of pressure, hoping that probably the ball would go back to Clement Potreneau, and he kicked the ball out. It'd be our line out, but I think I've never kicked the ball straighter. The way it actually sort of maintained its line on that touchline, it was quite unbelievable, and I think Clement Potreneau thought he had a little bit more time than he did, and I think the bounce at the end sort of certainly helped me. And Sean Edwards always used to say, you never give up lost causes, and keep chasing, and that's all I did that afternoon. And thankfully, so I think Stuart, Abbott and Fraser were the ones who first came to me and said, did you get it down? And I didn't have a clue, and I thought I did have some pressure, but whether it was going to be a try or not, and then it was the anxious wait as always for Mr. TMO, and he came up trumps.
Did you really believe that when you were chasing that down there you were going to score?
No, not at all. As I said, I think, at that time, the cagey last couple of minutes of any cup final with the scoreboard 2020, it's almost about field position and trying to put the opposition in their own 22 to try and exert pressure, and that was, I suppose, what I wanted to do. Ultimately, as I said, the ball maintained its straightness along that line, and I still quite can't believe it. And I've looked back many times. I've certainly wined and dined on that try many times as well, which I think for us, that game, it's the first time, I think it's the only time actually, that the subs never came on. I don't think we made one change. I think the starting 15 started, that finished the game, and I think that's a testimony to the conditioning, the fitness of the London Wasps team that year. And it's a fantastic occasion, because I think it takes special teams to win this tournament. I think when you look back at that squad and the team, there were some sorry stories along the way, losing Craig Dowd, because he missed out, having got injured out in Munster, and I think that unfortunately he missed out on that opportunity to play in that final. But I think throughout that team, in terms of players that were underrated, that performed at that highest level in the final, that probably should have had more caps for England but didn't. Fraser Waters comes to mind, Stuart Abbott comes to mind in the centres, Alex King, but the spine of that pack, the forward pack with Trevor Leater, Simon Shaw, and the back row were, as I said, Joe Worsley, Lawrence, and Paul Volley were outstanding. And I think it needs big teams, big players to win a tournament and a cup like this.
What did it mean to you to pick up the trophy, knowing that your moment of sheer persistence had won it for Wasps?
I think when you win games, you don't realise, that moment, that day, what you've achieved. I think it's only when you look back at the teams that have gone on to win, the Heineken Cup many times, or only one time, that you look back and you look at the team. And I think that when you get to the semi-final and the final of the Heineken Cup now and the Champions Cup, that you have to have an international team to compete at the highest level, and you have to have the ability to play the game in many modes, whether it's through the forward pack, through a fantastic kicking game, through the backs. It's that all-round game, and it's such a high intensity game when you play in the in finals now, and I think when you look back, our conditioning, our fitness were the ingredients to success. And you know, you can talk as I have done with the players that we had, but we were very well conditioned, and it was a very well-oiled machine, you know. And I think to go to Munster and win, and then to come back to Twickenham, which was special, in front of our home supporters, and I think throughout the year, you know, our home supporters, whether it was travelling to Perpignan or coming down to here to Wales, to Bridgend, we were always very well supported. And I think on reflection, it means so much to the supporters, the travel that they have committed to, and to see us win at Twickenham, which was only, I don't know, 10 miles from our training ground, which is special. That doesn't happen often. And you know, probably the abiding memory that day was the support that we had in the stadium. Don't get me wrong, the Toulouse support was fantastic. They almost travelled well, but I think that when you look back, there were flashes going back to the square in Toulouse, the passion which the French supporters bring as well, and certainly Toulouse did that on the day. But probably the Twickenham stadium was, you know, 70% London Wasps supporters, and it was fantastic for those.
Wasps have obviously had a number of meetings with Toulouse in recent years, including a couple of tightly contested ones, and we're all set obviously for the double header in December. Do you think there's become a bit of a special rivalry between Wasps and Toulouse? Yeah,
absolutely. I think the brand of rugby both sides want to play. You know, the French flair. You know, going back when the side that we played, you know, it was an international backline, and I think when you look at Toulouse nowadays, you know, it's got a similar traits of how they want to play, that DNA of French rugby, an offloading, handling, quick game, which, you know, they don't want to be messing around with set starters at set pieces, throwing quick line-outs in, quick ball, and recycling the ball quickly. And, you know, I really watched Wasps a long time, and the rugby that they play now is sort of, actually, I think it's taken the game to another level. They love to play the ball in hand. They're very much an attacking side. The speed and the intensity of the game, it's really good to watch. And I think that when Wasps and Toulouse play, you know, in this coming Champions Cup game, I think it'll be both high-scoring games, because both sides, I think, they're not that bothered how many tries they concede, is how many tries they score, and that's going to be a great advert for you know, both supporters and the Champions Cup.
And how important do you think that double header is in December?
It's huge, isn't it? I think that you know, Wasps will be, you know, very disappointed, probably drawing the game against Bath, but on reflection, coming away with a draw was probably a very good result. You know, going back, you know, the Heineken Cup doesn't change. You need to win your home games. It's key, and I think that having drawn the first game, I think they got a bonus point as well, which I think 2 points out of the game, which is good. I think, you know, they probably need to go into the double header with Toulouse with 2 wins if they're going to come back into contention with the group. Bearing in mind, I think, is it Leinster in the pool as well? So, you know, you look at the quality and the pedigree of Leinster, Wasps, Toulouse in that group. You know, as well as Bath, let's forgetting Bath, and I think David Young will be targeting those 2 games to get back into a chance of going through to the quarterfinals.
One final one. Do you still come along and watch your old side at the Rico?
I haven't been back for you know, a while. I continually watch Wasps on TV when they're on, and I'm looking forward. I'm coming back for that game. So I'm looking forward to it, to meet up with some of the former players. Obviously, I'm in contact with all the players that we played with, and you know, Wasps for me was a huge part of my rugby career as a player, having been coached by both Sean and Warren Gatland, but more in particular the affinity we had, that group of players, that year, 2 years with the supporters, you know. And the one thing about Wasps supporters, look, they've moved from London, then they've gone out, you know, into you know, near Maidenhead, and now they're up in the Coventry. And more supporters travel wherever attractive rugby is being played, and I'm sure the double header won't disappoint.